and welcome. I'm Nozi Pumbanjwa and this is Invest Africa. Tonight we're talking construction, from roads to dams to power plants and housing. Africa's construction needs, all of these are important. So how do we address these needs and how do we build a great continent in the process? Joining me now to help me answer this question in Lagos is Damola Akindolire. He is the General Manager of AlphaMed Property Development. And in Nairobi, we are joined by Andrew Mandera. He is the Chairman of the Institute of Quantity Surveyors of Kenya. For you at home, if you want to be a part of this conversation, you can certainly do that. You can tweet us at CNBC Africa and, of course, use the hashtag InvestAfrica. Well, today we have a unique opportunity to draw comparisons between the East and the West of the continent when we're looking at the construction sector. So let me start off in East Africa. Let me start in Nairobi with Andrew. And Andrew, let me get a sense from you whether you feel, maybe you can describe to us the relationship between the construction sector, and economic growth.
The construction industry normally is an indicator of the economic performance of an economy, because generally in the developing world, construction contributes approximately around 9% of the gross domestic product of most countries, and that is quite a good portion of the domestic income of any country. Right. Meaning then that if construction is doing well, it actually has a very huge impact on the general economy. If it goes down, it affects approximately 9% of any economy in the developing world. That is the relationship between construction and the general economy. So that relationship has been established. Let's head over to Lagos. Damola, let's bring you into the conversation. Andrew says that this is a reflection of the activity or economic activity in a different market. Given that, would you say that in West Africa we've seen government stepping up to the plate in terms of policy and ensuring that the right kind of incentives are focused on this particular sector to attract increased activity?
Sorry, I missed you a bit on that, if you don't mind.
No worries. Damola, saying, just to come back to you and bring you into the conversation, would you say that in Nigeria the government recognizes the centrality of the construction sector, and have they created a conducive environment to increase activity in the space?
Yes, definitely. The Nigerian government definitely recognized the importance of the real estate and construction sector in Nigeria. As you know, Nigeria was recently rebased, went through the rebasing exercise, which makes Nigeria the largest economy in Africa. And what that meant for the construction industry was the contribution to GDP moved up from less than 4% now to above 8%. So with that kind of growth and contribution to GDP, the government is looking forward to stimulating a rising challenge, which is unemployment in this market. And the construction industry is seen as a viable vehicle for the government to manage the unemployment crisis in Africa's largest economy. And that's the reason why they have, in some states, land taxes have been dropped. And also, you've also seen a policy driven with the private sector, which includes the setup of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company, which is to help improve the mortgage industry and liquidity in that sector. We believe with this, it will definitely give rise to a demand for housing and construction. And more importantly is the fact that you have a rising population in Nigeria, with majority of Nigerians living in urban cities. So in the case of Lagos, you have over 30% of people living in urban cities, which is even above India, which currently has about 30 of them living in urban cities. So that definitely would require some significant investments in the construction industry.
Damola, so it sounds as if on the incentives to create demand, the government is getting that right. So where are the construction opportunities in Nigeria?
Well, for Nigeria, the story in Nigeria is similar to the story with the rest of Africa. However, specific sectors that are gaining the traction at the moment is particularly giving focus to the rising middle class, which includes the development of retail spaces and across the country. And that's been giving a lot of good demands. And with every rising economy, one of the things you'd find is an acute shortage of grade A, affordable of commercial letting spaces. So that's also in short demand in Nigeria, which currently has started getting the attention of investors around the world. And then also, if you look at the housing sector, Nigeria has a housing deficit of over 15 million housing shortage. So definitely those are key opportunities that investors can be looking forward to change the dynamics of the construction market here in Nigeria.
Let's head back east to Andrew. Andrew, we hear that retail and the housing deficits are creating demand in Nigeria. How does this compare to what we see in Kenya?
I think the story looks almost similar like what is happening in Kenya. One, the rate of urbanization in East Africa, and especially in Kenya, and more so the greater Nairobi, is one of the highest. The urbanization rate is quite high. There's a lot of demand for housing. Actually, as a matter of fact, in Nairobi alone, the estimated annual demand for housing units is about 80,000 housing units per year. And nationally, it's estimated to be about 150,000 units of housing units needed each year. That means there's great potential to invest in housing in these regions, and more so for the lower income and the lower middle class. That's where the highest demand is. Beyond that, like in Kenya now, the government has laid a lot of emphasis on infrastructural development. There's a lot of infrastructure that is going on in terms of building dams, in terms of doing irrigation, in terms of roads, in terms of upgrading existing roads, in terms of expanding airports. And generally, there's a lot of demand in those sectors. But even beyond
Andrew, let me jump in and just get a sense of who's funding these infrastructural opportunities in Kenya. Where's the money coming from?
There is a lot of inflow of capital from outside the country. Like you find from the east, there are quite a number of investors who are coming to invest in Kenya. But also the government, through the private-public partnerships, they are injecting quite a lot of money, especially to infrastructural developments, and even for housing. The government is laying a lot of emphasis on housing, and the government itself has promised to try and house at least some 30,000 public workers. So it's also injecting quite a lot of money in not only housing, but also in infrastructure. And in particular, the road sector, there's quite a lot of injection of public funds and, of course, loans and through private-public partnerships.
Right. So it seems as if there's a great emphasis on public-private partnerships in East Africa. Let's go back to Nigeria. Damola, are we finding that Asian investors, as Andrew has indicated, are coming to the fore? And who else in Nigeria seems to have the greatest appetite for infrastructure and is pumping money into the construction sector?
Yeah, well, one of the things we've seen is the government is making also quite a large expenditure in the road infrastructure network in Nigeria. The government has rehabilitated over 25,000 kilometers of road access, and they plan to do more over the next coming years. However, what we've seen also is the recent entry of the Chinese investors who are spending quite a lot of resources in the area of the rail network, in the area of developing new cities, developing free trade zones, developing port systems. We've seen significant amount of money ranging over $10 billion in investments in that direction. So the Nigerian government is doing very well investing in infrastructure, trying to fund infrastructure deficits in Nigeria, especially in the power sector and the general infrastructure. But the Chinese investors have played critical roles providing support infrastructure services in the areas that I just mentioned earlier on.
Damola,
and then you have quite a bit of European investors looking into specific sectors such as the retail space and the tourism industry, like I mentioned.
Demola, let me come in, and you've mentioned the Asians, you've mentioned the Europeans as well as the Nigerian government. Maybe give us a sense then of the predominant models of ownership. Who's owning the infrastructure post the funding?
Oh yeah, the private-public partnership model is gaining strength, and like you know, Nigeria has passed the Infrastructure Regulatory Concession Agency Act, which gives investors rights over these assets for a given period of time. Some of the landmark transactions is the recent domestic airport, which was recently funded by a private investor and is currently under a build, own and operate model. You also have one of the largest links between the mainland and the Lekki axis, which is also funded through a similar venture. So the investors have rights of collection and ownership for the period as agreed in the infrastructure concession agreements. And in some cases, you find them to be a hybrid of both, where the government also funds some equity consideration, like we have in the case of the Mambila hydroelectric power plant in the Middle Belt. So you'd have a mix of that, and in such cases, there are vehicles to split revenues coming from such investments, but predominantly the investors would have rights over the cycle of infrastructure concession, as the case may be.
Well, we've taken a comparative analysis looking at the construction sector in Nairobi as well as Lagos, and also trying to draw some regional comparisons broadly from East Africa and West Africa. Let's take a quick break, but when we come back, let's dig a little bit deeper into the construction sector in the East and the West of the African continent.